Welcome to my show. I'm a guest here. His name is Zachary Cleland. Mr. Zachary, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. Doing good.
All right, Mr. Zachary, and also thank you so much for the time and the opportunity. Firstly, you are a crisis counselor. Can you please,
Yeah.
Mr. Zach, discuss more about yourself and how you are doing currently now, Mr. Zach?
So I'm a crisis counselor in Virginia. So specifically on mobile crisis. So that's usually going uh, to their house or somewhere in the community with clients who are experiencing crisis. Crisis varies drastically, um, both just person to person, but also if you think about it, it is subjective. What's a crisis for me is going to be different than a crisis for you or your neighbor. Everyone's going to threshold is different. But in general, as a crisis counselor, the people I'm seeing are either suicidal, homicidal, experiencing some form of psychosis, like having delusions or seeing or hearing things that aren't there. Um, they're experiencing some level of that or self harm, experiencing some level of that or a combination of all of them. Uh, and then they get to talk to me.
Very much beautiful. As a person who is connected to the sense of the mental health, most especially the crisis part of it, it is very much important for us to actually live a life of careness and also the great work you've done as well in regards to areas that can also build safety and also stability as well. And I would also like to ask, what do you think are some of the first emotional, mental, or physical and practical step a person can take when they are trying to recover after a period of intense distress, Mr. Zach?
Yeah, I think it can vary for everyone. There's no script of this is what works. There's things that work, and there's things that work for some people and not others. But in general, one of my first things is uh, the ability to give some self grace, um, to whether that comes in the form of forgiveness to yourself or just giving yourself the grace to acknowledge, hey, I am in that period of intense distress. It is okay that I'm not meeting my normal standard goals. It's okay that I'm having a bad time right now. It is not a reflection on myself or my value. Um, Particularly in America, we got a lot of cultural things that tie up our self worth with what we are able to do. So, like, if you are in a period of intense distress and you're not able to work the same way you did work, it's very easy to tie up that inability to work the way you were with a version of my self worth. So, if I can't work, I don't have self worth. And so giving yourself the grace to acknowledge that that's not the case. The fact that you are a human gives you worth, um, and to give yourself some compassion and space to heal.
Very much true. As humans, we always like to condemn ourselves. It is always not easy. We don't understand out of the life that we find ourselves. We know how uneasy it is, but we shouldn't use it as a sense of judgment towards ourselves. It does not help, and it also increases the wound that we have within us. As humans, we should always try our best to look for ways we can pick up positivity through grace and also see how we can help ourselves move forward and also become more stronger. It helps us in a very, very huge way. And also, Mr. Zach, I would also like to drive to the position while you think one can also try to rebuild themselves or rebuild that trust in themselves when it has really, really damaged in a very huge way. So, how do you think someone can begin to rebuild trust in themselves after a season where life felt emotionally chaotic, frightening, or out of control, Mr. Zach?
Yeah, I think one good way to rebuild trust, one, making sure that you're at a stage to start that rebuilding process. If you just suffered a trauma yesterday and you're like, okay, I gave myself yesterday, I let that go by. And so today I'm going to start rebuilding. That may be too soon, depending on what the crisis is. So making sure you've given yourself that time and space. But to rebuild it, one of my favorite things is pick something you know you can do. Uh, that the idea of rebuilding trust, you want to rebuild that trust, that self confidence, whatever that is looking like for you, whatever task you're going to do. Don't try to tackle the mountain. Just pick a small hill that you know you can accomplish. Because what you want to do is find tasks that you can succeed at to rebuild that feeling of like, yes, I can do this. So start small. Um, and if one common thing from a crisis situation, you might be experiencing heightened anxiety. So maybe the idea of leaving your house is overwhelming. Well, if the idea of leaving your house is overwhelming, I'm not going to tell you, hey, on the busiest day, go to the market and be surrounded by people. You're probably gonna fail if you're going from zero to that. But hey, sit on your front porch for 10 minutes, call a friend, and talk to them for 5 minutes. Just pick a small thing that's like, hey, I wasn't doing, I can do this little step today.
Very much beautiful. You made mention of two things. When we want to heal or we want to actually recover from a very huge, frightening, or something that's really hurt us really badly, we have to be prepared. We have to be in the position whereby we are ready to heal. We are ready to actually make a change. And also, despite how things are tough in our life, there are also people that we can also go out to and also heal as well. Every single person knows what works for them. Some people might be sitting in the couch and actually listening to favorite music. Some might be talking to a friend. Some might be getting a group of community they can actually try to engage with. We have to know what actually works for us to try to start to rebuild that trust in ourselves that has been damaged in a very, very huge way. I would also like to dive to the area of the listeners who feel ashamed, who are really ashamed of what they went through. They can't say it publicly, but they are really ashamed of it. So, what do you think helps them move from self judgment towards understanding, support, and healing as well, Mr. Zach?
Yeah, shame is a huge thing. I mean, that ties up with so many emotions also of like guilt, frustration. Also, as humans, we are communal beings. We need connection with others. And most things that we feel shame over, it's also because there's some social or cultural view of that thing that is negative. And so we feel, well, if people know this about me, they're not going to want me to be a part of their community or some version of that to different degrees. Um, and to deal with that shame, I think one of the biggest things, and what all mental health providers should be a part of doing anyways, is destigmatizing that feeling around whatever the thing is. Now, when we're talking about shame and crisis, that varies hugely. It depends on what the crisis is, what the shame is attached to that. But some general things you can try to do, regardless of what category you're in, whether it is shame around drug or substance use versus shame around being part of the LGBTQ community, whatever it is, finding community that will support you, whether that comes in the form of a support group. So, like, if you have a problem with drinking, here in the States, we've got AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, where you can show up and it's going to be other people who are going through the same thing. They're not going to shame you and they're going to ask you to share your story. And being able to share your story can be such a huge healing factor with that shame. Because when we feel shame, we hide it. And if you're sharing it with a community that's going to support you, whether that's your existing community of family and friends, or like I was saying, those groups that are specific for whatever crisis you're in. Oh, I don't know if I just lost you. My computer just went to sleep though. So there we go. Sorry. I don't know if you lost me, but my computer went to sleep. Um, but that shame, if you can share it with a group that's going to support you, not only are you bringing it to the light and you're getting to get it off your chest, the people around you should be people that are going to also open their arms, hold you, whether that's literally or metaphorically. They're going to create a space for you that is safe. And once you get to share that in a space like that, where you are met not with shame or anger, but you're met with love and kindness, it's going to make that shame decrease significantly and makes it harder for it to get those kind of claws into you, those negative thoughts that can come with shame, the blame, the guilt. It's a lot harder for those feelings to stick when we have people to share those feelings in our story with.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zach. It shows that no matter how things could be tough, no matter how we feel ashamed with our past experiences and where we want to belong as well, we need to take our time to find the right community that we actually want to fit into. It plays a very, very huge role in our healing process as well. Because if we try our best to fit into the right community, now we find people who are also facing the similar challenges and who will also understand us as well. And as we usually say, no matter what we are facing, we are always not alone. So there are people who are also facing the same situation out there. Ours is to find the right community we want to belong and also use that as a source of healing and also growth as well. Thank you so much for the beautiful insight, Mr. Zach. And Mr. Zach, I would also like to drive to the point of how one can recognize the difference between getting through the day and also or getting through the deeper work and healing or, and also recovery as well, Mr. Zach. How do you think
Yeah,
someone can recognize the difference between simply getting through the day and truly beginning the deeper work of healing and recovery, Mr. Zach?
yeah, I think that's a great question, and it's one that unfortunately, like a lot of mental health related questions, is it's somewhat subjective, and there's not a one shoe fits all solution or answer. I think one thing that exists in mental health is the scale of change. Essentially, it's the idea of, are you in a stage where you can't even begin to consider the idea that you need to make some sort of change? That's pre contemplative. There's the contemplative stage where you're actively starting to think, like, okay, you know what? Life isn't the way I want it to be. Maybe there's a change I need to make. Uh, and then there's preparing to make the change. So that might be like, okay, I'm looking for mental health care providers, or I'm trying to come up with solutions. There's actively making the change. That's when you're doing it. And then there's in the pre contemplative stage. So you aren't even thinking that you need to make any changes. Then there's the contemplative stage, which is like you're starting to think, hey, maybe I need to make some changes. Life isn't going the way I want. What can I change? There's the pre planning. So you're starting to plan what that change is going to be, how it's going to look, actively making those changes in your life. And then after that, it is sustaining that change and making sure we're moving forward with the life the way we want to. And I think one thing that you can do if you're listening to this podcast and you're trying to figure out if you are at a stage of like, hey, I I feel like I'm just getting through the day, but I want more and I want to make a change. Looking at that sort of those stages of change and deciding where you're at. Now, if you are in the pre-contemplative stage, you probably aren't listening to this podcast. You aren't thinking that you need to make a change. You feel like everything's great. Um, but if you're at a stage where you're starting to think like, hey, something feels a little off, feels like it could be more, feels like it could be better, then start thinking, what are the changes that I can make? What are the resources I could reach out to and use? Um, I also think one thing you can try to look at to decide, like, hey, how is this impacting me? One, if you've got trusted friends or family, reaching out to them and seeing if they have noticed anything. Have you lost interest in things you used to? Have they noticed changes in your behavior that maybe you haven't really noticed?
And you actually made this very much clear, Mr. Zach, in regards to the discussion we've had earlier, how we can know the difference. And you spoke about family, we spoke about ourselves as well, how we can also understand ourselves. That I think the changes is actually coming in. I think I'm also making the changes, and also you spoke about the process, which is very important because if we can try our best to recognize our issue and also try our best to see what we can do to actually work on those issues and also make a change and see how things will evolve. It also shows that our future and other things that comes along the way will bring out a new change within us as humans. And for this change to actually occur, we have to have people who are also noticing it for us to understand that there is actually a very huge change and healing is now occurring in our life. I would like to also drive to the point of common challenges because there are common challenges people face after a crisis has passed. Challenges could come out in any ways. But from the experience you've had, Mr. Zach, what do you think are some of the common challenges people face after a crisis has passed? Especially when the outside world expects them to be fine
Yeah,
again, Mr. Zach.
that one in particular, I think, has a lot of cultural significance because what our challenges in different cultures are going to vary. Like, for instance, one issue I have with the culture I live in is it's very individualistic, which makes isolation very easy. So I think that that is one of the big issues we see of people in crisis also self isolating and cutting themselves off from the people who could help them, their friends, their family. Um, Not that you don't see that in other cultural settings, but there's a lot of other cultures that have a stronger family bond where you have like multiple generations living in one house. It's harder to self isolate in those situations. Um, but self isolation, I think, is one of the biggest, especially tying in with that idea of like, okay, you should be better by now. What comes to mind for me with that is the crisis of death when you lose someone in your life and you're grieving that death. Uh, on average, about a month or so into that grief process, a lot of people start being like, all right, you should be back to normal. You should be at work. You should be going out with friends like you used to. You can see an initial heavy amount of support from friends and family during that period. But around the month part timeline, you get less and less of that support. And it's viewed as like a you should be better. When based on the data, normal grief, so like can't even diagnose this as a mental health issue, 6 months. Um, and we don't really see that same grace given. That idea of like, hey, you should be over this by now is what perpetuates and can make it really difficult. I think one thing that can be helpful with that is going back to the idea of talking about mental health and normalizing it and trying to normalize it to the degree where the person who is in grief is not having to say, hey, I still need help, I still need support, but creating cultural shifts where, as a culture, people understand, like, hey, when someone in my life is grieving or in crisis, it's not going to be a quick fix. There's going to be days where they seem okay, but I need to remind myself just because they seem okay today doesn't mean they're going to still be okay tomorrow. And I still need to try to show up and offer that support where I can. And if I'm going to offer support, particularly if they're a close friend, obviously the degree of relationship matters. But if there's someone close to you, what are the things you can do to help without having to ask? What are the things you can take off their plate? I think a common one is making food. That's a wonderful thing. They don't have to think about eating. They don't have to think about what they're going to eat, what they're going to cook. They have food there because I brought and gave it to them. Or some other things, because if everyone's bringing them food, they probably don't need another lasagna brought to them, another casserole. Uh, but maybe they need help doing their laundry. Maybe they feel like they haven't been able to get out of bed and it's just a mess around them. Cool. I'm going to come in and I'm going to clean that up for you. And I'm going to do your laundry, and while I do that, you should sit outside on the porch and get some sun. You don't have to talk with me. We don't have to talk about anything if you don't want to. I'm here if you want, but I'm going to just do this thing to make your life a little easier.
Mr. Zach, I completely agree with you, and I also sincerely appreciate you for this wonderful insight. Because despite the life that we find ourselves now, it is more of isolated world currently. And I love how you brought it in form of individually, which we could make one more isolated. But despite everything, for us to actually heal, for us to actually become more better, we have to come out there. And you made it very clear. Volunteering is one of the greatest tools for us to become more better, for us to heal more faster, and for us to live a life whereby we feel more happier and we feel fulfilled as well. For us to volunteer, no matter the position we find ourselves, help us to thrive and also help us to see a lot of things that can also groom within ourselves, our life, and also make us feel more important and also heal more faster as well. So that point is very much important, despite the kind of world we find ourselves today. This kind of areas where we can be of assistance in one way or the other is one of the best role that one can play, which will really help one in a very, very huge way. From the bottom of my heart, Mr. Zach, I sincerely appreciate you for the wonderful insight because our emotions plays a very, very huge role. It is not easy when a emotion is already down, most especially when it is damaged. It is not easy to get it back on board. And that is why we always have this profound and insightful discussion so that we can know the trajectory which we can also take to help us groom and also become more better at large. Mr. Zach, there is also a question I normally ask during the end of the show. From our
Yeah,
forefathers, from our ancestors, there are a lot of beautiful things that do exist during our forefathers' time that is missing in our time today. If there is anyone or anything you would like to bring back to our time today, Mr. Zach, what do you think that thing will be, Mr. Zach?
I think I like that. I like that question a lot. I think for me, and maybe this is just because we were talking about the cultural impact. So I'm thinking in my area in the region I serve, uh, what are some cultural things that could shift and come back? And I think having a stronger community focus. With social media and technology, it brings a lot of good things, access to things, a global community, which is cool and great. But it feels like we have also lost a lot of family connection and immediate community.
Completely agree, Mr. Zach. I completely agree. Our love and our care continues to stay in the world we find ourselves, but it has transcended down to the point of digitalism, which is the straw and also social media and what we have out there. But the values and who we really are always comes from our families, our friend, and also the community we belong. Those are the places where people understand us better, where they see us as people that can actually thrive and also become more better in the world we find ourselves. And that is why, despite everything that we have out there, we do hope that people understand that the real value and the real joy is always within the family, the community, and also the nature, most especially in where we find ourselves. So I sincerely agree with you and also appreciate you for that wonderful insight, which we do hope comes back in the coming future. And also, Mr. Zach, I want to use this opportunity to thank you for this profound discussion and also the work you do out there as large. Thank you so much, Mr. Zach.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was delightful.
All right, Mr. Zach. Have a wonderful day, Mr. Zach. Bye bye.
Bye. Have a good one.